am here with Oliver to Oliver. What's your take on this limited format?
It's really interesting. It's pretty unique in the sense that you're drafting decks rather than just cards. Because, for example, sets like Origins and stuff, you're just drafting a good curve, bunch of creatures, some removal. But in this format, you want to draft a deck with a plan. You want to be playing Madness, Delirium, the Clue deck. There's a lot of cool stuff you could be doing, and it's really synergy-based.
Well, what's the one that stood out the most for you? If I could sit you down and say, you're going to get a good version of whatever deck you want, what do you pick?
Black-Red Madness deck.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it could be really aggressive, which is always good, and it gets a lot of card advantage and has a lot of ways to play really cheap removal spells like Fiery Temper. And sometimes you could just flash in the 3/5 Madness guy.
Yeah, the Twins of Mauer Estate.
Yeah, and get one of their creatures. It's really hard for them to play around everything if you just have a discard outlet up and just a bunch of mana. They just can't play around everything.
Stensia Masquerade. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
It's super good in the right deck. If you're an aggressive Madness deck with a decent number of vampires, it's one of your best cards. But then outside of that, I'd say it's just straight up unplayable.
It just drops off the chain. But you will have it if you're that blood mad vampire style deck, right? That's where you want it.
It could be insane in those kind of decks.
Yeah. Okay, Oliver, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate hearing your thoughts on Limited. All right, I am here with Oliver Polak-Rotman from Team Eureka. Oliver, what's your take on the Limited format?
Well, it's at first we thought it's a slow format, but then we figured out it's actually super fast and very important. 2-drops are key to the format. Drafting control decks is really hard, so we try to be as aggressive as possible, draft 6 to 8 2-drops, possibly. Combat tricks also are much better than in any other format. We saw Fabrizio winning the GP out of nowhere with just combat trick spells, and that's our take on the format.
Wow,
being super aggressive.
That's crazy because I know that one of the big questions coming in were these uncommons. We call them the build around me uncommons, and those are generally not aggressive cards, right?
No, I mean they're all good and they're all playable besides the black one, but that's not where we are looking for. We try to find the open archetypes and go into that. Most of us try to avoid blue, so what's the best 2-color pair for this aggressive deck? What's the, if I could sit you down at the draft table and say, you're going to get a good version of this deck, which one would you pick? I would pick green-white just because we did all the numbers, we recorded every draft, and it had by far the highest win percentage of all.
That was the one that did the best? Thraben Inspector?
Thraben Inspector.
The 1/2 for white? Do you like that?
It's a perfect card. I mean, it's great. It's a 1-drop that cycles itself.
And you can target it with a combat trick?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad. It's good with the equipment as well.
No, I like the card quite a bit. Yeah, of course, real quick, equipment, is it generally good or is it generally not so good?
I would say in the humans deck, it's a good card. It's actual good card. Otherwise, I wouldn't run it.
Okay. Oliver, thanks for taking the time to tell us about what you think about the Limited format.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're here with Reed Duke. Reed, I got to know, because I love watching you draft. What are your thoughts on the Limited format?
I like this Limited format, and it's quite different from what we've had. I would say a first basic rule is the mana fixing's quite poor in Shadows over Innistrad, so I give myself kind of just a firm guideline of always playing 2 colors. Some formats you take off-color dual land for a possible splash later, not so in Shadows over Innistrad. Also, while the games can range from being quite fast to quite slow, it's the fast decks that really, I think, guide the format, and even if you are choosing to play a slow deck, you have to be prepared for that. So if you're going to be spending your time sacrificing your clues and drawing cards, you got to have the high toughness blockers to really hold the ground, not get run over by something like a red-green werewolf deck. Yeah,
so these more aggressive, assertive decks are kind of the check and balance.
Exactly.
They're keeping those slow decks in check. What's the ideal one? When you're talking about these more assertive, aggressive decks?
My favorite aggressive deck is the red-green werewolf deck. It just has the meatiest creatures. Both those colors are very deep. I mean, you can just look at green, and almost every common is like an above-sized green creature that you can put in your deck. And then red has great burn spells and combat tricks, and the two together give you the whole werewolf tribal synergy, which can make for really, really powerful decks.
Yeah, there's some nice payoffs for that one as well. Reed, thanks for taking the time to give us your thoughts on Limited.
Thanks for talking to me.
Pascal Maynard from Team East West Bowl. What is your take on this limited format?
I like green a lot.
Green?
Green I think is the best color, not close. And then I think it's followed by white and then red, and then far away blue and black.
Okay.
And I don't like drafting blue. I think it's too gimmicky. I also don't think I drafted it enough to be confident drafting at the Pro Tour. The only blue deck I like is the Rise from the Tides deck.
Oh, you do like that one?
Yeah, I think this deck is very, very good.
Now that's usually blue-red?
Blue-red or blue-black.
Blue-black too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I really like that deck. So if I was going to draft a blue deck, it would be that one. Any Naya combination, so white-red, red-green, green-white, I'd love to draft any of these decks.
How would you categorize these decks generally? Are they more assertive, looking to end the game pretty quickly type decks, or are they long game?
The red-white is looking to close quickly. The red-green and green-white can go a little bigger, but they're still just pressuring you all the time. So, just have the bigger creatures.
Yeah.
So they can't afford to go late game because even like the black grindy deck's not going to have creatures matching your creatures. So that's why it's so good.
Like the werewolves too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they get real big in the late part of the game, and sometimes early as well. That happens as well.
Yep.
You said you thought that the blue stuff was a little too gimmicky for you, right? And you're talking about like the build around me type cards, right?
Yeah.
So too slow? Is that what you mean? Like you're just not doing enough at the time?
You have engines, but it's not closing the game.
Yeah.
So like you're doing all these stuff, but they're so small. You're making like Call of the Bloodlines token with your Sanitarium Skeleton, but you're still just having 3 4s and 4 5s in front of you. Like what are you gonna do? You're eventually just gonna lose.
You can pay 4 mana for your 1/1 all day. I'll just keep attacking.
Draw your +2/+1 trample thing, and you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just think it's not good enough. I think there's a way to draft those decks, and it's potentially good.
Okay.
But it's not what I want to be doing.
Okay. Pascal, thanks for taking the time to tell us about Limited. Appreciate it. What is up, everybody?
I've heard that before.
I'm with Luis Scott Vargas here. Luis, what's your thoughts on this Limited format?
First of all, it's great. That's my first thought.
Good fun?
There's a lot of fun here. And second of all, there's just a lot of different decks and just really different ways to approach the format. So one of the things that really struck me and that really drove this point home is we were doing our limited meeting for the team, and we'd laid out all like the red commons, say, and we had like them all ranked in different tiers. And I pointed out that just about every single red common was differently ranked depending on which deck you're in. You have cards like Senseless Rage, which are good in Madness, or Blood Mad Vampire, which are good in Madness. You have cards like Voldaran Duelist, which are good in any aggressive deck. The one exception is Fiery Temper. That's just a great card.
Just good.
But then you had all these other cards that really varied. Like you had Pyre Hound and Sanguinary Mage, which were great in the blue-red spells deck and kind of unplayable elsewise. And just looking at how these cards, were different based on the different decks there, and that just kind of sums up this limited format.
When it comes to speed, do you feel like this falls into a category of being fast, slow, everything's represented? What do you see when you think
it's
about
a little
speed?
strange where most of the decks are slow. Some of the decks are really fast, though. You have red-green werewolves or red-black vampires. You're going to end up, if you think that you can do nothing till turn 4, you're going to end up, in a bad place. But if you play against like white-green Delirium or green-black Delirium or like a blue-green Clues deck, yeah, sure, you can do nothing for a while. I mean, they're doing their own thing. You're both just kind of looking at each other. So it's a lot of slow decks and a couple really fast decks, which the overall speed, I think, means slow because you're less likely to play against a fast deck every round. But when you do play against a fast deck, you are playing against a fast deck.
And you have to be prepared for it.
Yeah,
you just can't.
If Green-White Humans
ignore
goes 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, Inspiring Captain, Intrepid Provisioner, you're going to get beaten down if you're not prepared for it.
Yeah. All right, Luis, thanks for taking the time to give us your thoughts on the limited format. Raphael Levy, what's your take on the limited format?
So this limited Shadow over Innistrad is a very deep set. There are a lot of commons that are playable without being great. They're all playable, and that gives a lot of depth to the format. It feels like there are a lot of different archetypes that are very different. You have the Clue archetype, Investigate. You have the Delirium. You have the control mid-range, the super aggro, and they don't really take cards from each other. So that means you can't really go into one thing and not fight for these cards with anyone else. So from what I've seen, you can choose a setup, choose an archetype, and go into it. And if the cards come along, you'll have your own strategy that will go well. I like more the aggressive strategies in the format. I really like mono red.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
my thing. Yeah, I really like Chip. I've drafted a couple times mono red.
Oh, that's crazy.
They're great. So mono red, blue red, like super aggressive creatures, 1-2 drops, like a lot of spells to clear the way.
Combat tricks?
Combat tricks, yeah. I like that strategy because over the long game, some archetypes are very good, and it doesn't matter what you have. If you get to the place where they actually like play what they want to play, like the Delirium, they have some really good cards. It's the clue that investigate
Sure.
deck. If you get to the long game, it's too long. You can't fight that. It doesn't. If you have just an average deck that goes like white, blue, no real bomb cards, no real like super good cards, you're not gonna beat a deck that's gonna go like draw 3 cards a turn. It's
So
gonna be too
you'd
hard.
rather just end the game as soon
Yeah,
as possible?
yeah.
All right.
That's my take on this.
I like it.
Yeah.
Aggressive from Raph Levy.